If you're watching this video, then there's a good chance that you like fabric. And if you like fabric, there's a good chance that you have a fabric stash. My fabric stash started neat and small and organized, and I knew where everything was and I knew everything that I had. But it didn't take long for it to get out of control. More and more projects, I didn't put stuff away, and it just became this overwhelming pile of fabric. Well, not today. Now we're gonna get that fabric stash under control. Hi, I'm Julie Patterson of JCT Quilting, and I want to help you turn your memories into quilted treasures. Over the last few months, I've been pretty busy making quilts, which is great. However, when I finished a quilt, I didn't take the time I should have to put the remaining fabric away. I just piled it on the floor. This has really been bothering me. So this last week, when my machine was in the shop and I couldn't sew, I decided it was time to finally tackle this fabric stash and get it organized. I approached this organization project with 3 goals in mind. The first goal is no fabric on the floor. I wanted this fabric up, put away, organized, and where it should go. I did not want to leave anything on the floor when I was done. The second goal is to change the direction of the comic book boards on my fabric shelves. You can see that some of the boards starting to bend, and I'm hoping that by turning the boards to lay on the side, that problem will be eliminated. I also know that some of these boards are only holding a little bit of fabric, and I can come up with some other way to store them. My third goal for this project was to understand my limits. Sometimes when I clean, I can get a little crazy and out of control and not be fun to be around. I did not want that to happen this time. This time I went into it knowing I was going to need to take breaks, and it might take multiple days, and that's okay. Now that you know my goals, which were the foundation of this project, let me explain to you the process I used to organize my fabric stash. Hopefully by the end of this video, you will have the confidence to organize your stash. And if you want more help, check out the notes for this video. I've prepared a PDF document that walks you through step-by-step what I did, provides picture explanations, and in the PDF are label cards that you can use to categorize your fabric stash. Before I chose my categories, I first thought about the quilts that I typically make and the quilts that I'm planning to make in the near future. I then thought about the fabric that I need for those quilts, and these are the categories I came up with. I wanted to keep fabric that was bigger than 3/4 of a yard, which I consider yardage. I also use fat quarters or half yard pieces. I love using 10-inch squares, which are part of layer cakes, 5-inch squares, which are charm packs, 2.5-inch squares, mini charm packs, 2.5-inch strips, jelly rolls, and 1.5-inch strips, honey buns, which are great for pineapple quilts. Before organizing your fabric, I encourage you to take some time, think about what size fabric pieces you typically use, and then make your categories. Organize your stash one small pile at a time. Every time you touch a piece of fabric, you take it out of the bin, take it out of the pile, put it in a category, or do what you need to do to get it into that category. Do you need to fold a half yard so that it can go into the half yard pile? Do you need to cut a piece down to 10 by 10? Maybe it's 11 by 11, you need to cut it down. Do what you need to do to put it in that pile before you move on to the next piece of fabric. If you just make more piles and deal with them later, you'll just have more piles that you need to deal with later, and no one wants that. Finishing a pile is a good opportunity to check in with yourself. Are you ready to keep going? Are you ready and eager to do more sorting? Or do you need to pause and take a break? Decide what is best for you in that moment, and then do it. Now I will show you how I fold and organize my larger pieces. This is a fat quarter, which means it's about 18 by 22. To fold it, I take the side that is 18 and fold it to the other side that is 18, and then I fold it once more in that same direction. Then I fold it in half in the other direction, and then I do the tri-fold. Fold it up a third, and then fold it the rest of the way to complete the fold for the fat quarter piece. Now I'll show you again on another fat quarter. I found when I first started folding this way, I really needed to use the ruler to see which side was the 18 inches, but once I got into a rhythm and a groove, I was able to see which side was the shorter side, fold the shorter side to the other shorter side, fold again in that same way, fold it in half the other way, and then tri-fold. Of course, you can fold your fabric however works best for you, but I knew I would be storing the fat quarters in a container that fit best with fat quarters folded in this way. And you can see here I tried to adjust the fold to make sure the selvage edge is on the inside of the fold somewhere, so that what's showing on the outside and what I will see on my shelf isn't selvage, but it's just the beautiful fabric. I fold the half yard in the same way that I fold the fat quarter, but first I have to get the half yard to the size of a fat quarter. So I start by folding the half yard in half, selvage to selvage, so that it is now the size of a fat quarter. And then I follow the steps for a fat quarter. 18-inch side to 18-inch side, fold it again, then fold it in half the other way, and then fold it in thirds. With this piece, I briefly considered cutting it into a 10-inch square, but then I decided it would make really cute binding. So I got out my 2.5-inch ruler and just cut it into 2.5-inch strips. I proceeded to cut 2.5-inch strips out of the next handful of pieces that were in this pile. When it comes to folding fabric on the comic board, I was previously wrapping it so that it would go around the long side of the comic board, as you saw in my picture earlier. But I didn't like the bend that was resulting, and the boards just weren't standing up well on my shelf. So I'm going to switch it and now wrap the fabric around the short side. So I'm going to open the fabric, fold it in thirds. Basically, I'm just folding it so that I can get it to be less than 7.5 inches. So in this case, I found that I could get that by folding it in thirds. Now it's smaller than the comic board edge, the short side of the comic board, and so I can lay the comic board on the fabric, tuck part of it over, and then roll it up. Then I use alligator clips to clip that fabric in place. I don't like using pins because I don't like stabbing myself on accident, and I find these clips do hold the fabric on the boards even when I move the fabric around on the shelves. Let me show you this fold for a 1-yard piece of fabric one more time. I fold it in half and then fold it in thirds. I'm trying to get it to less than 7.5 inches, and then I can wrap it around the board and use my alligator clips to hold it in place. So what do I do if I have more than a yard of fabric? I still fold it in half, selvage to selvage, and then I fold it into thirds to get it to be less than 7.5 inches, or about that size. But I just work in parts. So I'll fold the third, roll that section, that yard or so, onto the board, and then move more fabric onto my table, fold it into thirds, and then roll that part of the fabric onto the board. And then I still use the clips to hold the fabric in place. Using this method, I found that I could get even pieces of fabric that were up to 4 or so yards onto a comic board. After I finished organizing the fabric into all of the size categories, I decided that for a couple of the categories, I wanted to take the organization a step further. For all of the fabric that I put onto comic book boards, I wanted to organize those onto my shelves by color, and then I had a bunch of Christmas fabric, so I left that as its own section at the end. And then for the fabric that was sorted into the fat quarters and half yards, my daughter wanted to help organize that fabric. So I let her do what she wanted, and she decided to organize by color and then by themes. So we also organized some of the fabric into themes like stars, food, stripes, animals. So we organized it into the bins in that way, and then we put everything onto our shelves. Okay, what are you going for first? Pinks?
Pinks, yes. I kind of want to do a rainbow in a bin. Like a pink would start and the rainbow would...
I don't think we can get a whole rainbow in one bin.
No, yeah, I want to like continue
From
it
bin to bin. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
The organizing is done. Let me show you how my fabric stash looks now.
Hi. So, yeah.
So the very top is a project bin with some projects in it. And that is some fabric that was too thick to put on the comic book boards. Those are some books, magazines, patterns, manuals, resources. We have some thread for my machine, and then 2.5-inch scraps. That is more 2.5-inch scraps, and more 2.5-inch scraps, and even more 2.5-inch scraps. So we definitely need to work on some 2.5-inch projects. And then the next few shelves are fabric that is at least 3/4, and they're wrapped on comic boards. And then what is that?
We did this earlier in the video. We organized a bunch of
Fat quarters.
fat quarters in categories.
And color.
Uh-huh.
And then next to those
Yeah,
those are layer cakes, so 10-inch squares. And then down here is bins sorted by color, except that on the upper right side is 5-inch squares and some binding extras. And this will be a future project to go through and sort this in the same way that all the other fabric was sorted. Maybe incorporate all those bins of 2.5-inch strips and organize everything by color. And yes, some jelly rolls that I haven't used. So future projects, but at least now it's neat, it's organized, I can find stuff, and everything has a place. I hope this video helps you achieve your organization goals for your fabric stash.